You're watching the National News Desk, America's News Now.
Developing now, growing conflict.
This is Hezbollah's plan to turn southern Lebanon into a battlefield for its attacks on Israel.
As Israel fights two terror groups, we now wait to learn how many U.S. troops are headed to the region. Security dispute.
We are in a threat environment where threats are at historic highs.
New revelations about the second man accused of trying to kill Donald Trump as the Secret Service faces growing scrutiny. Alarming reach. New signs that a violent Venezuelan gang is expanding criminal operations in the United States. And doom spending, the costly trap catching more young people and how to stop it. Live from the nation's capital, this is the National News Desk, America's News Now. I'm Mark Boyle in for Jan Jeffcoat. It is Tuesday, September 24th. This morning, we're following a growing concern for American families right here at home. U.S. troops could get pulled into the escalating violence and growing conflict in the Middle East as Israel takes on the terror threat to its north, Hezbollah. But the focus today will be on the president, President Biden. The president will give his final UN General Assembly address, and Angela Brown is at the live desk now. The president will address the war in Gaza, but also Ukraine.
Right. I mean, we are basically less than an hour away from President Biden addressing the UN General Assembly for his final time. Now, the president is expected once again to address the wars in Gaza and Ukraine. At the same time, Ukraine's President Zelensky is also, you can see in the U.S., holding meetings with President Biden and Vice President Harris and GOP nominee Donald Trump on what he calls Ukraine's path to victory. He's expected to ask the U.S. to ease up on restrictions on long-range missiles. The meeting also coincides with efforts from the White House to prepare a new $375 million military aid package for Ukraine. At the same time, we're learning that U.S. is sending more troops to the Middle East in the coming days to help Americans get out of that region. Right now, nearly 40,000 troops, that number right there, are already there. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke directly to the people of Lebanon following Monday's major IDF airstrikes in Lebanon.
Israel's war is not with you. It's with Hezbollah. For too long, Hezbollah has been using you as human shields. It placed rockets in your living rooms and missiles in your garage. Those rockets and missiles are aimed directly at our cities, directly at our citizens. To defend our people against Hezbollah strikes, we must take out those weapons. Now, starting this morning, the IDF has warned you to get out of harm's way. I urge you, take this warning seriously. Don't let Hezbollah endanger your lives and the lives of your loved ones. Don't let Hezbollah endanger Lebanon. Please, get out of harm's way now. Once our operation is finished, you can come back safely to your homes.
And right now, White House representatives are still working on a hostage deal with Qatar and also Cairo. About 100 hostages are still believed to be alive. Now, Biden's speech once again is set to start at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. We're keeping a close eye on today's talks at the United Nations General Assembly in New York and also for the rest of the week. New details as they come in right here at the live desk.
Our Angela, new information this morning about the man accused of plotting to kill former President Donald Trump. Ryan Routh will remain in jail without bail. He has faced a federal judge in Florida yesterday, and right now he's facing federal gun charges, but prosecutors are also considering attempted assassination charges. Authorities say he plotted for a month, had several phones, had a number of license plates stocked away. When he was arrested, he also had a bullet loaded in the chamber of his rifle that was found outside Trump's Florida golf club. As Routh appeared in court, Congress is looking to add to the budget for the Secret Service, while public approval for that agency is actually sinking. The National News Desk, Matt Galka, reports.
Prosecutors say Ryan Routh wrote this letter admitting that he was trying to assassinate Donald Trump. Routh was shot at by the Secret Service when they spotted a rifle poking out of the tree line at one of Trump's golf courses before Routh was later arrested. The letter also offered a $150,000 bounty for anyone who could, quote, complete the job.
We need additional personnel, technical assets, and equipment for the sustainment of immediate and future needs.
The Secret Service highlighted the need for more resources last week as Congress scrutinizes the agency. Lawmakers are questioning multiple security lapses that allowed a would-be assassin to fire off shots at Trump in July and Routh to lie in wait for 12 hours at Trump's golf course last week.
Hopefully, it doesn't get worse, but I got to tell you, to me, it is very troubling where we are today and what we're trying to get to. And the people we trust are the people that let us down the most.
Congress is set to throw the Secret Service a $231 million lifeline, including the money in its latest proposal to avoid a government shutdown.
No doubt a series of cascading failures that day, which is reflective of a cultural problem, a command and control problem, but they are no doubt stretched thin. I mean, we are in a threat environment where threats are at historic highs.
The agency will only get the money if they cooperate with multiple congressional investigations into the assassination attempts. There's also some Republicans questioning whether the DOJ and FBI can fairly investigate all of the ongoing threats.
That's why disclosure and openness with regards to these investigations is so critical. It's not just because we want to know, it's because it's important to preserve trust in our institutions, and we're not seeing that.
A Gallup poll completed before the latest assassination attempt found that the approval rating for the Secret Service was at an all-time low. Only 32% of people rated the agency excellent or good. That number was at 55% last year. Reporting in Washington, I'm Matt Gelka.
Former President Trump also questioning the release of that letter. He wrote, "It's very difficult to trust the Biden-Harris DOJ, FBI to investigate the assassination attempts due to what he calls fake cases brought against him." Former Trump Attorney General Bill Barr writing, "It was rash to put out this letter in the midst of an election during which 2 attempts on the life of President Trump have been made. It served no purpose other than to risk inciting further violence."
It's incredibly dangerous, irresponsible, and shows a really poor judgment being exercised by at least the U.S. Attorney's Office, but most likely all of the Department of Justice. But this information to be out there was purposeful, and that makes you kind of question all of these decisions because they always seem to make the decision that harms President Trump the most.
After these 2 assassination attempts, a new poll found 57% of voters feel it's irresponsible to label a political adversary as a threat to democracy.
And back here at the live desk, House Republicans are gearing up to hold Secretary of State Antony Blinken in contempt of Congress over the disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal. But Blinken may be a no-show for this hearing. We're going to explain that to you in just a moment. But first, here's what he is accused of. This is all according to that resolution. Blinken helped execute the now infamous Go to Zero order to evacuate all U.S. personnel from Afghanistan. It also blames Blinken for keeping the U.S. Embassy in Kabul open simply too long. The resolution also says Blinken failed to request an evacuation order for civilians until after the capital city fell to the Taliban in mid-August. Now, if found guilty, Blinken could face up to $100,000 in fines and up to 1 year in prison. But the penalty here is seriously rarely executed against high-ranking officials, especially, of course, in the White House. Blinken is not expected at today's hearing because he's scheduled to speak at the United Nations this week in New York City. So far, Blinken has testified before Congress on Afghanistan more than 14 times, including 4 times before the same committee, according to Reuters.
An illegal migrant now charged in the death of a St. Louis police officer. Police say 24-year-old Ramon Chavez Rodriguez was intoxicated when police arrested him hours after the crash. Authorities say he was driving 71 miles per hour when he hit Officer David Lee. There's his picture. Chavez Rodriguez remains behind bars without bond. He's a Honduran national who entered the U.S. illegally. And right now, federal authorities are facing a growing threat. The violent Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua is expanding criminal operations in the United States. And the New York Post reports the gang is targeting desperate women and forcing them into prostitution in 8 states at least: Texas, Nevada, Illinois, California, Florida, Georgia, New Jersey, and New York. In addition to those claims, more reports coming in accusing the gang of using migrant shelters in American cities to recruit new members and build a criminal empire right here on American soil. The National News Desk, Christine Frizzau, has more.
There is widespread evidence the vast majority of migrants coming to the United States do so for the same reason as this Ecuadorian man we met in New York City.
La situación en Ecuador está bastante grave.
A dangerous situation at home and the hope of work and security here. And while the numbers of those arriving at our southern border has dropped dramatically, there are growing concerns about those coming as part of the Biden administration's parole program, bringing those from 4 countries here by plane. U.S. Customs and Border Patrol data show more than 530,000 migrants have taken part. That includes more than 117,000 from Venezuela, a country with which the United States has no diplomatic relationship, which means background information about them or their prior criminal history is hard to come by.
It makes it so easy for this TDA Venezuela gang that's so treacherous to come to the United States and set up bases. There are bases in New York and other states across the country, and now including even in the state of Texas.
The New York Times reporting members of Tren de Aragua are living and recruiting new members inside the city's migrant shelters. In Chicago, local media is reporting on gang turf wars, a phenomenon predicted by a former border chief in Texas.
But what happens when you start going head-to-head to gangs like MS-13 that are just as powerful than what you have? You have a big mess. You have gangs fighting gangs.
When the black gangs get fed up with the illegalities and the criminal activity of these migrants or non-citizens, the city of Chicago is going to go up in smoke.
The city of Chicago has spent more than $400 million on migrants over the last few years. Local residents there and elsewhere are starting to become more vocal at city council meetings, arguing that money would be better spent on low-income residents who are citizens of the United States. I'm Christine Frizzell reporting.
This morning, dozens of lawmakers are criticizing the Biden-Harris administration over its treatment of migrant children. In a new letter, they accuse the administration of covering up information about the surge of unaccompanied migrant children and failing to vet their sponsors in the United States. Last year, a New York Times report claimed the federal government lost contact with 85,000 migrant children in the U.S. Ahead this morning, Battleground Blitz, the surprising endorsement that could help Trump win a close battleground state. And spending spiral, why more young Americans are wasting money on luxuries instead of saving up.
And in Birmingham, the manhunt for multiple suspects as police plead for more information after 4 people were killed in a mass shooting. The reward being offered, the disturbing details emerging. We're going to have the latest in 90 seconds. And right now, the search in Alabama is intensifying, and the reward money here is growing for the suspects involved in a mass shooting in Birmingham over the weekend that killed 4 people. Right now, up to $100,000 in reward money is being offered for tips related to that deadly shooting. 4 people killed, 17 injured. So far, police say they've received more than 50 tips since Saturday night shootings. Officials say that multiple suspects started shooting at a large group of people. This all went down near the University of Alabama at a popular entertainment district. They believe the shooting was a targeted hit, that one person was targeted. That person apparently is one of the 4 people killed. Over 100 cell casings were also discovered at the scene. And new this morning, we have learned the name of the fourth victim. 26-year-old Roderick Patterson Jr., pictured on the top left of your screen, died at UAB Hospital shortly after that shooting. 21-year-old Anitra Holloman, 27-year-old Taj Booker, and 27-year-old Carlos McCain are the other victims who were killed in this tragedy. At last check, 5 victims, 5 people are still recovering in the hospital this morning. We're working with our reporters in Alabama to get you more information, and once we learn more, we'll pass it along to you.
All right, in election news this morning, the presidential candidates continue to court swing state voters, with former President Trump visiting Pennsylvania. And he warned tractor company there, John Deere, not to close down U.S. factories and send manufacturing jobs to Mexico.
I'm just notifying John Deere right now. If you do that, we're putting a 200% tariff on everything that you want to sell into the United States, so that if I win, John Deere is going to be paying a 200%. And anybody else that does this, because it's hurting our farmers, it's hurting our manufacturing.
While there, Trump also stopped by a grocery store. Here's some video right now in Pennsylvania earlier to see the prices for himself. And he helped pay groceries for a mother of 3 children.
Here, it's going to go down a little bit. It just went down $100. We'll do that for you from the White House, all right? Thank you. All right, bye.
And new this morning, a new poll found 80% of Americans say the country is greatly divided on core values, up from 77% in 2016. Right now, we are just 6 weeks away from Election Day. The clock is ticking, and the candidates are racing across swing states, trying to get every single vote possible, including in Michigan, where Donald Trump picked up a surprising endorsement. The National News Desk, Atra Al-Nashar explains.
In recent presidential elections, results don't get much tighter than they do in Michigan. In 2020, President Biden won by about 154,000 votes. In 2016, Donald Trump won by fewer than 11,000 votes. That's about 2 votes per precinct. That's why on Sunday, when the mayor of Hamtramck, Michigan, announced his support for former President Trump after a closed session in Flint, it made national news.
Toward the end of the meeting, he asked me, would you be able to endorse me and tell people to vote for me?
Ghalib, a Yemeni-American leader in the first U.S. city with a Muslim-majority council, wrote on Facebook, "President Trump and I may not agree on everything, but I know he is a man of principles. And I'm ready to face the consequences."
We have hope that he will end the war in the Middle East. There is nothing worse than what's happening now.
During the state's Democratic primary earlier this year, more than 100,000 voters cast their ballots as uncommitted in response to President Biden's support for Israel. Leaders of the uncommitted national movement announced last week they will not endorse the vice president, but urge their supporters to not vote for Trump.
We believe that we can continue to grow our anti-war organizing power and really push for real change as it relates to failed U.S. foreign policy under a Democratic coalition. It's where we believe our power lies. It's where we've built strong connections.
The movement's co-founder, Lexis Zaydan, says Arab and Muslim Americans generally still see the Democratic Party as their political home. Harris leads Trump in almost every statewide poll, but it's a close race. The Hamtramck mayor may not be the person to turn that around. Ghalib and the city council aren't exactly known for being progressive. Last year, they gained national attention when, during the middle of Pride Month, they voted unanimously to ban LGBTQ+ pride flags from city properties. The mayor says he told former President Trump he'd like him to visit Hamtramck and that he expects the campaign to set up an office in the city to ramp up their ground game over the next 6 weeks. In Washington, I'm Atra Al-Nashar.
Many Americans are still wondering where Vice President Harris stands on creating a pathway to citizenship for certain migrants and if she is changing her position. Axios is reporting Harris is backing away from her past promise to use presidential power to unilaterally give a path to citizenship to 2 million Dreamers, undocumented immigrants brought to the U.S. as children. Asked whether she would take the same executive actions, her campaign declined to answer. And this comes as this new video was unearthed by the Daily Mail. It shows the then California Senator Harris at a Los Angeles rally in 2018 when she chanted, quote, "Down with deportation." A live look over Capitol Hill this morning, where the clock is ticking toward the September 30th deadline to fund the federal government. Speaker Mike Johnson plans to bypass House rules to advance a 3-month spending bill. Lawmakers will vote on the bill under suspension of rules requiring a 2/3 majority vote to pass. That vote expected tomorrow at some point and will require significant support from both sides of the aisle. A Senate candidate is trying to pay back what she owes after taking advantage of a tax credit inappropriately that did not apply to her. Democrat Angela Alsobrooks is running for Senate in Maryland, but right now she is the county executive in Prince George's County, which means it was her job to know the tax law as the county's revenue collector. Alsobrooks admits she benefited from the tax credits on 2 properties that she owns, but it was not intentional, she says. She got a homestead tax credit in Maryland, as well as a homestead and senior tax credits for her grandparents' home in Washington, D.C. Now to your money. Anxiety over the economy and the future is driving some Gen Zers and millennials to blow their money on luxuries instead of saving. The National News Desk, Janae Bowens, has more on that trend.
Now, this is called doom spending, and young Americans are doing it to self-soothe. The country has seen some challenging times with higher prices for everyday needs, and the American dream of home ownership seems further and further away for many people. But despite the issues, money experts are begging folks to change their perspective.
Let's create our own rich lives. Let's know our numbers. Let's create our own point of view, and let's banish the vortex of doom so we can live our own rich life. So please, do not become a doomer. I know it's tempting. I know everyone else is doing it, complaining about the price of lettuce. But please don't. It is the wrong way to go.
Globally, only 36.5% of adults feel like they're doing better than their parents financially, while 42.8% think they're actually worse off than their parents. That's according to CNBC. Now, experts say doom spending creates the illusion of control in what feels like an out-of-control world, but not saving and investing actually gives you less control in the future. As for tips to avoid doom spending, experts suggest avoiding online shopping. When you have to choose a store, travel, hold the items, and stand in line to purchase. It will help you slow down and think more critically. Also, paying in cash makes the spending more painful because you are actually handing over the money.
And we are following the high-profile sex trafficking allegations against Sean Diddy Combs, who's still locked up this morning. What's next in his case? We're back in 90 seconds.